Okay, we're up and running. So a little bit late just doing this one for the weekend review. Had a couple of little technical difficulties in there, but seem to have everything sort of back and running now. So look, it's pretty late on Sunday. It's only just past 12 o'clock. So yeah, just going to try and sort of steam through these charts just for the week and sort of see if we can pick out some sort of trends and what we're sort of looking for with the week to come. But look, I'll start off with the DXY because obviously this is everybody's favourite trade sort of through this week. Certainly one that I've been playing to the downside all through this area here. And certainly it was pushing back up here. You had a sort of like a little bit sort of scratching your head, sort of thinking, when was it going to come back around? But obviously, look, it's broken down. We had the NFP, we had the CPI, we had this sort of large range through all of last week. This is on a 4 hour chart, and we're seeing here that it's obviously sort of broken through. It even tried for a little back test to sort of hold up on the inside, and bang, it just committed to the downside, and it really sort of closed on its lows there. So I think the first thing that I sort of was taking note of where it's actually closed at the end here, like it looks like, okay, yes, coming down, consolidation, bang, push through, which gives us our next sort of little short-term price target if we were to be sort of just trading off this zone here. So for the next sort of measured move of this particular sort of bear flag, which is broken out to the top, well, bottom side here, sorry, I should say, gives us this move down here, sort of sub 103, really. And look, it looks pretty clean so far, pushing through to the downside. One thing I did notice, though, of where it has sort of stopped is if you flip onto this daily, oh, do I have it on one of the other charts, actually? No, just the daily sort of seems. So flying back and forth here. We saw the completion of this larger bear flag, which sort of played out. So if we have this one sort of dragged up here, I'm not sure why these ones have been lost on it all, but this sort of bear flag, which came from the initial drop from NFP, or actually just prior to NFP, we had that little gap down to come up to the top here, and bang, that's a completion of the full measured move. Very clean, all to the downside there, and that's where it sort of closed the week out. So typically sort of like when you see these things, like, I mean, from a normal sort of standpoint, sort of watching this sort of break, you've got, you know, you break down, support, resistance, test the lows, break down, do it again, support, resistance, tighter this time, break down, test the lows, go through. Normal sort of flow would expect to see certainly a little bit more sort of downside coming through here. Seems to be having a few difficulties with this. A little bit more sort of downside here till it finds some support again, and then sort of pushing up. Probably a retest of these levels here, then a retest of these levels here to sort of see if we can get a push down to that sort of price level or price target, which will be around this sort of zone down here in a normal sort of course of action. So you've obviously got to sort of take into account, you know, any sort of little bits of news and that sort of coming out. The fact that it has sort of done this sort of completion of this sort of bear flag, and also the fact that it closed on its lows, which, you know, if you were trading shares or stocks or something, you'd be like, bang, well, that's it. It shows there's no buying pressure. It was the end of the week, though, and this is FX and shit. So generally sort of like, you know, just because something closes right on the lows isn't a guarantee the same as, you know, with stocks where you might sort of see it just go, well, you know, come Monday, selling continues, bang, pushes down. It certainly broke the key levels, but if you sort of look at this size of this big sell down here, and I'm not sort of saying that you'll definitely get a repeat of these, but these are just examples, that you look at these sort of big bearish candles here, the ones that actually continue are the ones that have got a little bit of a range to play and then break to the downside. You've got this big one that closed down here, very like it had a tiny little sort of wick down the bottom here, but ultimately reversed back up. Similar with this one here, we had a big move to the downside, small wick, and a move to the top side to sort of come up here. So what you really sort of want to see is, as I said, sort of basically once you drill down onto the lower timeframes, you can see this kind of little back and forth range, and then you can see that range give way. The fact that it closed on the lows coming into the end of the week, I think still gives it, you know, as I said, I still think we'll have a little bit of downside. It may not come to this point. I just drew that to that line there. I mean, this could be coming down here, here, here. We'd have to sort of get down onto the lower levels, drag across some support lines, and sort of see where we might be sort of finding some support. So obviously, if we have a quick look over here and we go, so okay, where might we be seeing some sort of daily support? Certainly through this zone here, as it's pretty much in line with where I sort of have marked this out. I imagine that, look, we're probably going to get some buying sort of coming through. If we do happen to pop that down, we go okay down to the bottom of these wicks, because we can see that a whole bunch of times buyers gave it a shot and sort of supported it, held it. Even when it sort of came down here, they're buying it under here, and we've got the wicks down here as well. So this is what's going to give us this level here, and again this level here, and this is getting very close to that price target of that sort of latest bear flag measured move. So I certainly think we've still got a little bit more downside to come, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do get some push-up rallies just to sort of negate some of this, because you got to think as well, this has been a pretty strong sort of move to the downside. Yes, we've had these little flare-ups along the way, but there's going to be a point where people sort of start to go, hold on, wait, let's give this another shot, particularly if you get the data coming out that supports the moves. You may see these little sort of push-ups and attempted rallies. Ultimately, I still think we're coming down. We took out the first price target this week, and you can see sort of as it sort of took it out, it played around in this zone for a little bit, and obviously sort of subsequently, as I just said, we've had this sort of breakdown to the downside and sort of continuation through there. But this is why I have multiple price targets, because the thing is, these things can sort of shoot straight back up. It could obviously sort of continue coming down. That's fine. It's nice to think you sort of, you sell it here and then you sort of cover it down here. But it just doesn't work like that all the way. It's sort of like, I take little bits off, bits and pieces along the way. So anyway, if we get down onto the 1 hour here, it shows that sort of like, this is where we marked it out on the Friday. It was coming down quite strong. So this was after that sort of UK retail data came out. And for some reason, I get it that it's sort of like, weak sort of pound data coming out. Well, people sell that off. That's part of DXY. You're going to see it move up. Like, that's a sort of natural. But you got to think of the largest sort of landscape of everything at the moment. Like, the US has had another drop off in their CPI. Market beat the expectations. They've got a strong sell sort of pressure sort of coming down. Is it just that sort of like the UK data, weak retail sort of data comes out that everyone's going to say, oh yeah, let's go buy US dollar? No, it's just, this is a knee-jerk reaction purely just of people selling the pound based on that weak data, most likely probably algorithms or something. Because as you can see, it didn't last very long, and then turned around and snapped and just went bangs, absolutely slapped down to the downside there. This is where we were sort of saying, look, this is the zone. Obviously, we got it marked out. We knew that the buyers had been here a bunch of times, and they tried to step back in here again. This is sort of coming into the sort of later part or middle part of the US session, I think it was. Start of the US session. And you can see there's a real sort of tussle around this zone before obviously sort of giving up to the downside. So I think, you need to respect that this has broken, regardless of time of week and all this kind of stuff. I don't see a big sort of flip turnaround just because it's a fresh week. If you, as you can see here, I drew up this sort of little fib on this latest move to the downside. It couldn't even get up to the 38. And that's a pretty sort of strong sense that you're going to see a continuation. Obviously, that's what we got to the downside here. So early week, I'd expect a little bit of a push down on US dollar continuation there. And then you probably get your sort of turnaround Tuesday sort of thing happening, and we might sort of see a little bit of a sort of rally coming back up to the top side. But the interesting thing with this is if we do get this early push of selling off US dollar as a broad sort of thing, this is Aussie, which I'll flip on to 1 second, is at a very sort of crucial sort of point. Like 65 is a big sort of resistance for it, which is it's tested a couple of times. I mean, even last week, if you go back and watch the video I did last week, I said, look, it was on its last legs, and I was looking for it to sort of repeat the same price action that it had on the daily, but on the larger time frame on the weekly, which was the breakout, resell 61%, and then to drive back up. So that was interesting. If you go back and check that video, you'll see it. But we've got exactly that played out. So as I said, look, jump onto the Aussie. Not too many of these charts that are working here, but if we have a look and chuck it on the weekly, and that's exactly what we got. It's actually an engulfing weekly on this chart here. But the thing with these sort of plays here, you wanted to see this big push to the top side. We obviously put in a pretty high sort of little move here up to sort of 65.42, but unable to sort of obviously hold that move. I'll get down into a lower time frame in a second. But the fact that it's sort of come back up and pushed through is great, but we want to see this zone taken out because obviously higher time frames are going to be stronger, and we know that this was a very strong zone here. It's been a strong zone here. It's been a big sort of crucial point. So it just came into the top here. So if you can get above this zone here, as I said, this area, I called it as it was happening, felt very trappy to me. And I think if they really want to hurt these people, then we're going to sort of see a bit more of a continuation to the top side. And this is what I was thinking. If we get a bit of a sell-off on US dollar in the early week, well, Aussie is already sort of pushing right at that tip, right at that big breakout point. We've got a little bit of a flag that was setting up here. This one obviously came back down a little bit further, but you could give a measure move of this above 66. 66, I think, is going to be a very sort of tough nut to crack. But, you could see a bit of a cup and handle sort of playing out here. You could see this little flag coming out here. Flags and cup and handle pretty much work out to the same measured move, and that just depends how you sort of like to sort of chop up your charts, really. But it's all predicated on being able to sort of take out this zone here. So if I jump onto the other chart, this is the one that that I was looking at on Friday morning, and this is what I was saying is in this tussle between the sort of the buyers and the sellers, and we could see that this was the zone. This was crucial. This is why I marked it out and said, look, you want to see that no matter what the market throws at it, they're just going to keep buying it up, buying it up, buying it up, buying it up. And even this last one here, this actual bottom wick on this one was from as that sort of UK news came out, which obviously just got bought up and then just overtook. And even as it was trying to sort of sell it back down through these zones, we came up, we tested them, came up, bang, closed on the highs, but didn't break through. And as a look, it's the end of the week, so it's a sort of it's a tough time to sort of really call too much of it. But the same sort of thing, how we're seeing the buyers are all sitting here, sitting here, sitting here, sitting here. And this is, if you go back and watch my commentary on the Aussie from the Friday, I said this is exactly what's going to happen. They're going to start to say, hey, look, what, I'll sell it here, sell it here, sell it here. They realize, what, anything that gets put in the zone gets bought up, and bang, what happens? It overruns it. Comes up the top here, sellers come in pretty much exactly where we sort of said in this band, come back down. What have the buyers done now, though? They've sort of come up and they've said, give me anything in this zone and I'll buy this. And that's why it sort of made itself a new little support. And this is what happens sort of as it moves up and up and down, sort of over and over. So put this one into zone. So what we're seeing so far is a move up of the buyers. They're trying to hold everything just under 65, push it through to the end of the week, closing near the highs. If we get that sell-off on US dollar, I think there's a good chance we could get an early run. And if we get an early run, I mean, we're only, where are we at? 54 points from price target. And this is the price target, remember, sort of from back this large triangle, back down here, 63 is when we called this one. And we said, look, first price target, measured move, off the breakout zone. That's what gave us our price target. Admittedly, at the time, sort of, it was put it around this zone here, and we got very close, and obviously sort of came back down. But point still remains. These price levels are at prices; they're not time levels. So look, I think if we can get an early sell-off in US dollar, we're sort of seeing that sort of even as it's trying to push back down, we're still seeing RSI sort of pull back healthy to give another go and give another press to the top side here. I think there's a good chance we can clip this price target. It's 54 points, 55, whatever, 50 odd points, let's call it that, to price target. This would go in line with what we're saying, where we're sort of saying that, look, if a US dollar sells off early, you can hit your price target. You take your profits and that. Yes, obviously, I'm always going to leave a few runners. But, if then we get a bit of a bounce with the US dollar, that'll give us time to sort of come back down here, which potentially could give us a nice little retest of these levels, the previous highs, which we know, as I said, has been a very strong resistance. So if it can prove itself, and this is the same thing on every time frame, you look for the breakout, you look for the pullback, and then once you break that breakout candle, that's when you go, okay, that's confirmed of that move to break out through that zone. Again, we could just sort of see this pattern just up in this zone, and we could start to range through this area as well. It really depends on sort of, obviously, basically what's happening with the US dollar. We got a bit of data out on Tuesday for the Aussie. So we've got not so much data, it's the minutes coming out from the RBA. Bullock's also speaking in some panel or some forum as well. These kind of things as well, like, it's time for her to sort of put her money where her mouth is, because everyone was saying that she's going to be more hawkish than low. But, her wording hasn't been overly hawkish. Of course, yes, they raised last time, but that was like the most telegraphed rate rise in a while. I mean, I don't think there was really much of the market that was saying, there was a chance that it wasn't going to happen. And you saw the price action, as soon as that happened, it just got smashed into. So if they say, hey, look, you know what, we're firming up, we're going to take a stronger stance, and, they come out with a little bit more hawkish talk, that's going to keep Aussie elevated and up around this area. But here and now, we need to get and hold above this 65. That high 65s, I think, is going to provide a little bit of sort of resistance, as we know that this is quite a heavy level. And then I'd expect a little bit of a sell-off. And again, you look for where you can sort of start to draw out some channels, pick up some pullbacks, draw up some fib lines, sort of see what needs to be done. Like, of this move that came up through here, I think this, as I said, was off the CPI. Big pullback, but, it came back, it only came back just past the 30, pretty much to the 50. So, it's certainly not a dead run at the moment. And if we start to sort of drag out a couple of lines here, we might sort of be able to pick some sort of further pullback levels if we do get a breakout, and then we can come back and test this rising support. But this will be Tuesday, Wednesday kind of biz. I'm still looking for a little bit of an early push on Aussie, and continuation of that price action that we saw coming into Friday. If we flip across and have a quick look at gold, so gold actually did very well for the week overall. As you can see, it's respecting this channel that we've sort of put together. The pullback, if you look through this move here, obviously when we drew that fib, only came down 38, clipped it. And this is what I'm saying. When your pullbacks are fairly shallow, 38, and it comes back, retests the highs, there's a good chance that the buying pressure is going to push through. It's the super deep pullbacks and that which can be a little bit risky, but they're lower risk entries. But you certainly want to see, like, when you see these things keep pushing through and they only manage to come back a short period each time before running towards the highs, then that's generally a sign that sort of it's a little bit stronger and you're going to see some more continuation. But what I sort of picked out and sort of isolated through the week was this 1980 level. And to me, like I said in the other videos throughout the week, this is the area we want to play in. But I mean, this is this kind of thing here. If we can get a bit more of a push up, continuation, I think there's still a chance that we could stick around here. I mean, you've got to consider everything, and maybe sort of like we'll get something where we'll sort of get a bit of a drop down. It takes out this channel and we get a little bit of a flush out and comes to the downside. But for the here and now, I think it's still looking fairly strong. This negative divergence from down the bottom, I just noticed this earlier, that it's really sort of seems to be sort of shoring up this line. So this is one thing to watch as well. If we do get a break of this, and then almost sort of take out that sort of lower level, so if we get a little bit more selling in than we did previously, that could be something to watch for a little bit of a deeper pullback as well. Currently, we're looking what could be a little bit of a sort of negative divergence through here. So we're seeing this last push up, which came from, from 74, which got us up to 92. This zone through here, this has actually come in with a slight less amount of sort of buying pressure. Again, into the end of the week, so it's a bit hard to sort of call these things too much, but for me, the main takeaway was holding this at 80 zone. I think 80 is a really crucial area for gold to sort of be above. So I think sort of like certainly, again, we could see some downside for a push up. You could get a retest of this previous support of this 1970s level, which has sort of played a little bit of its part as well. But as long as it maintains above 1980, I think the pressure is still on to keep pushing towards and sort of taking out these other levels. If we jump onto the monthly, these are the sort of key levels that I'm really sort of looking at because, where we at now, it's the 20th, well, it's actually the 19th, but it's technically the 20th because it's just ticked into Monday morning. But we're up here. You can't sort of see it so much. Let me get a bit of this stuff out of the way. You can see here a better view of this. This is your monthly candle. We've come right down, we've pushed right back up to the top. So above, what's it, 84 is your monthly flip. We've got 2004, we'll take out our own monthly high wick. But the big one you want to take out is 2008, 2010 is the continuation confirmation for me. Whereas we're going to see people go, okay, look, we're taking out the previous candle's wick. There's a high chance that we get a little bit of a push up here. RSI is going to pull back a little bit through this zone. It's got room to move. Though it's not, it's still up towards the sort of overbought area, but, it's flatlining, and it could really go either way with it all. So if we still see a bit more of a continued sell-off on US dollar, which ultimately I think we do have more downside, I think this could very much be the sort of driving factor that feeds gold to really push above that 2000. I mean, we've got 10 days left, and it's certainly in the ballpark to get above this area. And if we look on the monthly, it's right at that zone. I mean, technically it's 1990 or 1991, wasn't it? 1991, that it's never had a monthly, well, actually it closed at this one, so 1990. It's never had a monthly close higher than 1990. Give it 2000 because that's the sort of, gives it a, not just up by a couple of bucks or so, but gives it a solid push and also, that sort of mental level of 2000 as well, then that's going to be, on a lot of people's radar. A lot of people are going to be talking about it. A lot of people are going to be going, hey, look, you know what, we've got a big, big breakout coming. And you could say that sort of like you've got to move like this. This is something that could seriously be on the works to happen. I mean, we could be seeing sort of major highs here. Look, this is getting obviously way ahead of ourselves, but in terms of how your sort of technical trades work, that is a flag, and we've got a breakout of this, and if we see the continuation to the top side, take out the swing high, well, there's no real limit, because price has never been here before. So you can't say, oh, technically it's from this level or that level. You can draw up sort of predictions, but even that's a bit rough with realistically gold being sort of sideways for the last couple of years, like through this zone. So anyway, that's, again, getting ahead of ourselves. The here and now, holding above 1980, I think it'd be crucial. This isn't a great sort of daily candle to sort of be closing on, sort of with that sort of top wick, but above 1980, you got the RSI to support a little bit more of a move to the top side. I don't think it's dead yet. I would say we're at least minimum going to be having another test of 1992. These things don't tend to just die in one go. You'll see it push up again. You might get one high here, and a little head and shoulder sort of pattern happening, and then sort of, obviously taking out the lower side of this wick at 1977 to see a bit of a pullback to 1970. But I think it's still a buy the dips kind of situation. I don't think it's off the cards quite yet. Flip across copper. Copper's still sort of slowly charging on. That was certainly a nice sort of change here because, this is that big sort of falling resistance, been respecting the whole year. Closed outside, back tested, came through and closed just off the highs. I think that's a great sort of close for copper there. 380 is certainly still the level that I'm kind of looking to sort of get above. I think so. A couple of people are going to be starting to take notice of this now because we have put in official sort of higher lows and also higher highs. So, as this sort of keeps moving up here, we've got the RSI that's sort of pulled back. It's sort of set itself up. It's crossed over again. And I would say we've definitely got a little bit more push to the top side around this sort of 380 zone. Where are we at here? So 380, this is why I've got it marked out because it's on the weekly, which is obviously a little bit higher than the sort of dailies. Well, obviously it's a weekly, but if you were to sort of drag it up above that, you've got a big sort of basically just little congestion zone through here where we've got pushed up to wicks. We've got those other previous daily resistance areas here. I would say as it comes into the 380, I expect a little bit of a pushback, but I wouldn't be surprised if it sort of powers on and pushes on a little bit further. This in turn is obviously going to help Aussie. So if we sort of see a bit of a push up, pushback, something along these sort of lines, I would say the next sort of price target, if we can get above 380, would be this 360 zone. Obviously, where we're seeing sort of sellers came in quite strong. This was the start of quite a significant sort of sell-off, which actually brought us to our most recent lows. Is obviously sort of the last effort as it tried to get out of that zone previously. So as I've been saying for a while, I think the horizontals are the ones that I want to sort of start, well, not start, which I'm going to be continuing to sort of trade off with copper. But certainly, if you can pick out these little channels, they certainly help along the way. But that big triangle, as far as I'm concerned, the downside's been played out, the top side's seemingly played its part and has been played out, maybe for a little resistant support if we get a fail later on. But for now, I think, we've got a little bit more sort of upside in copper coming as well. I'll finish off with China because this is one of my favorite trades. Well, favorite trades to have just played out because it has been an absolute grind the last 3 months through this whole zone through here. As I've said, 100 times, it's a 1% range for 3 months. It's just been insane. But we had this nice confluence, and this is what I've been talking about the whole time. Once we got through this rising support, and also the confluence of this horizontal, as soon as this gave up here, it just gave up and went bang, bang, bang. And you can see pretty much price target clipped, and we've seen a little bit of a push off from those zones there. So price target for that, I mean, it's obviously basically it's a range measured move, as you can see through this area here. And as to where you actually call the bottom of the range, you call it here, you call it here, call it here, whatever. That's 2 cents off or something like this. So pretty much for me that's a completion, and I expect possibly a little bit of a dribble sideways. I mean, it's hard to sort of say because obviously, as I've been saying a couple of times, I do think the US dollar's got a little bit more downside. If we've got copper coming up for some upside, I would expect sort of this also to sort of be working at the same time as the Yuan, sort of like strengthening a little bit. So I think this needs to be respected, the fact that we had this very long range and it broke to the downside. And this is what I say, you don't just see one thing break. You can look across all the charts, you can work them together, and when you see it, it's not just one instrument that's breaking out, and you go, okay, look, that's breaking out, but these other ones aren't showing the same thing. You're looking for sentiment across a broad range of markets, and if we get enough of those sort of markets all pointing in the same direction, then you've got a better idea or a better sort of confirmation that that's the general sentiment and that's the mood in which the market's going. It's not just one little bit of data here or one sort of geopolitical thing happening with these guys. It's going to be breaking across a bunch of them. So I've been playing the downside for this for a while, like the better part of 2 months or 3 months or however long it's been to get out of this range. And obviously, we had a lot of things coming up that sort of said it was going to happen, but it just took a lot longer than I originally planned. Anyway, we've got the break. We're down to the downside here. I am still looking potentially for some sort of move down to this sort of like 712 zone. I think this is going to be the sort of area that's going to actually sort of provide a sustained bounce. Again, these aren't sort of price level, they aren't time targets. This could happen very quickly. It could happen over here. This is just general, shows the sort of pattern, the direction in which I think it's going to come. If we do get this sort of push down here, I think very much this big head and shoulders could be something that we could be sort of looking at moving into 2024. I mean, we've only got 5-6 weeks left of the year, and the last couple of weeks are going to be pretty flat rubbish. So 2024 is right around the corner. So at the moment, bounce pretty much off the 23. I think it's got a bit more downside come to the 38. I reckon that's going to give us some support sort of early January. And then I think sort of like once we can break this, if that happens, that's going to be looking for a confirmation of this sort of potential head and shoulders, which gives us quite a significant move to the downside coming in through next year. Like if you've seen a couple of my sort of tweets and that, I'm pretty sort of vocal about sort of a quite larger move potentially playing out on DXY at the moment. Certainly got to wait for some sort of more key levels to sort of be taken out. But if we look at sort of how the price has been running the last couple of months, it's been unrelenting move to the upside just after they made a significant new low. That to me is pretty much a squeeze. Significant new low. It was on a third drive down. A lot of the market's going to be going, oh, sweet, it broke these key levels. Let's all pile in. And what do you do when everybody piles in? You just drive it up the other side because that's where the pain trade is. And it gave no relief for anybody that was sort of long on it. So if we sort of go back out onto like the monthly here, where were we here? Sorry, onto the weekly. This is what I've sort of been looking at. Like, this is just drive down here. This is where a lot of the market said, look, here's a supported from January, supported in April, all the way, say, April through May, came down here. This is technically, well, it's not technically, it is, new lows, yearly lows. Everybody would have piled in. And it went up here. It tried to push drive back down, but this is just an unrelenting move to the top side. I mean, it's 13 weeks straight or 14 weeks straight or whatever it was, coming up here, took out anybody that had their stops here, anybody that had their stops here, right up into this weekly resistance zone. These are the sort of hallmarks of a sort of a short squeeze, because it just doesn't give any pressure off for people to go, okay, as it comes down a bit, I'll sort of relieve a bit. It's just very hard in one direction. So if we can come back down, and this is obviously forward thinking, but if we can come back down, and we've got the RSI on the weekly very much supporting a continued move to the downside, possibly after some retests or so. But if we can get a continued push and drive to the downside, we could be sort of seeing sort of very, very big sort of drops down. I'd be looking, as I said, if you look at my tweets, onto the 161, lines up very nicely with potentially this flag. Well, it's flag. I guess you could say it's a flag, but it's a short, not even a short. It's a downtrend channel. So it's very late here. It's almost 1 o'clock now. But this downtrend channel coming through here. And if you really go a little bit further with it all, and you have a look on your monthly, actually, where did we put it? Check it on the three month. This is how I'm sort of seeing a potential downside move if we can take out those lows. Coming down here, the 161 of this last drive up to overcome itself to come back down to these lows. This is the rising support of a 3-month time frame channel. And of course, as I said, on the lower one, you've got that, where we go, flying around here. You've got this sort of potential downtrend channel coming as well. So 94 is my sort of ultimate target, 94, 95 on DXY. This is sort of probably like a 3, 4, 5 month call, but certainly it'd be something worth revisiting if we can continue to see a little bit of a sell off to the downside. Anyway, that's about it from me.